My name is Mike Murphy. I'm a 33 or so year Hill resident. Moved to DC in 1993. Uh, Married, have raised two kids on the Hill. I'm a consumer protection and whistleblower sort of class action attorney, litigator. Charles has done a number of good things, obviously the schools, the libraries, but a lot of that stuff, as you've seen, spread across the ward. I mean, across the city, right? Through the various wards. So I think there is some familiarity there, obviously. I mean, he's spent the last 20 years inside the Wilson building, which is sort of two-thirds of his adult working life, I think is allows him to understand where the levers are, where the buttons are. But I think that also can be a detriment, right? Because you start to substitute your own beliefs about what is best. You look at his website, he says, I know this ward better than anybody else. I think that ethos is also problematic, right? Because you saw the substitution of his beliefs in the extension of the voting rights bill and the crime reform bill, certain things that have gotten on Congress's radar. Being unencumbered by special interests allows me to go in and evaluate what's working, what's not working. I've shown an inclination to do oversight. I've done a ton of independent work. I think new blood will be important because you can evaluate a program that you may have pushed through and sort of pretend like parts of it are working or parts of it are not working as intended or whatever, right? I mean, we need to come to grips and make government work. We need
Mhm.
to make sure our programs are working, our money's being spent, and we're getting productivity out of it. And when you're so close to these programs for so long, it's hard to step back and evaluate sort of what is actually working, what is, I have no hard feelings toward Charles. I've worked with Charles on a couple small things.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that you get so close for so long that you have a hard time evaluating sort of what's around you and acknowledging when things aren't working, I think is as important as, good policy. I mean, committed to oversight, committed to hearing people and getting these good thoughts. And this is one of the benefits and you face and acknowledging that you don't know everything or you don't know everything. The people who are closest to it are the ones that know best. So, whatever, we'll have to be creative. I mean, we did it before, right, with a stadium there and the parking permits and making sure that we get real traffic enforcement so people aren't driving like maniacs through our neighborhoods as they're prone to do, and parking and whether it's being creative with Metro and getting a flat, dollar fare on game days or something to push people onto trains, we need to do. I mean, it's just again, it's as this thing evolves, just listening to people and hearing what they're saying and getting it. Somebody's got ideas, whether you can use 10% of them or 100% of them, you should get those ideas on the table and figure out sort of what's going to make everybody satisfied or at least heard that this is why they can't do it. No, I mean I do not welcome the interference. But we also have to acknowledge that with that has allowed a bit of a release valve for our, sort of overworked and understaffed police department, which I understand they're big police department, they're big per capita, they spend a lot of money, but we're down about 7,000 officers um, from where we were in 2012. with the additional bodies, we've seen a higher than normal sort of clearance rate on robberies and clearance rate on homicides.
Mhm.
So I think it's incumbent upon us to sort of build the police department back and demonstrate that we have enough bodies. I mean, we're spending over $100 million in overtime when we budget about 20 or 25.
Mhm.
So it's on its face. We are short. As far as um, crime, I think, in policy and crime and, criminal justice reforms and such, I think it's important to take chances and take, policies on that might be somewhat controversial, whether it's, no cash bail, a number of things, right? But I think where there's less room for my personal preferences is gun violence and sexual violence, which I think is one thing that has, put the criminal code reform bill very much on Congress's radar. I sat through a attorney general forum last week where, the AG Brian was talking about, 95% of that bill is something that everybody can agree on. And it's without that bill, it was a 10-year process. Um, it is hindering some reforms and some public safety stuff. But I think rather than letting Congress overturn that bill and moving on, I think it's very much incumbent upon the council to, strip out the 5% of that bill that doesn't make sense, the reducing crime, reducing sentences on sexual predators, on the jury trials for misdemeanors, and a few other things. It's just stripping that out and passing the bill and demonstrating that we can lead on these issues and not shrink from them and demonstrate and sort of push back at Congress's incursions into home rule and demonstrate that we're willing to do it. There should be out of the mayor's office. I think it's what is it, the state superintendent?
Yeah, awesome.
Uh, Yeah, I mean, we need to remove some of that from the mayor's purview. I think the complete mayoral control model, which came out of Boston and came down here, yeah, that model, I think we do need to sort of bifurcate some of that to get some back to more of a citizen control and more, to make sure the teachers are at the table there and more, more transparency as far as specific, policies of how that would be a process and listening and making sure. But I think it does. Some of that needs to come out from under the mayor's office in order to make sure that we have, here the trade-off is there. You've got sort of a little more sort of rapid response, so to speak, because
Mhm.
it's all under one umbrella. But I think the trade-off of getting sort of the stakeholders and the inputs and slowing things down a little bit and making sure that they're working and that we're, sort of getting our investment. We're investing in these kids, right? And we want to make
Mhm.
sure that we're getting our money's worth, and we pay an exorbitant amount of administrative costs at DCPS, and I think that's something that really needs to be revisited as well. I mean, these are companies that are, determining where to be, and it's a shame that Harris Teeter at near the Roost didn't pan out. And it sounds like there's something back in there going. I mean, I think we need to we can fill some of that with farmers
Mhm.
markets, small farmers markets. We can fill some of that and just, again, making sure that if there are neighbors that are having a hard time getting groceries because they're not in proximity, I mean, I think that's a gap that we can fill. But we can certainly try to induce more stores to locate to the ward. Again, it goes back to public safety, right? It goes back to making sure that people are sort of can. We're a little insulated in Ward 6, which is really nice. I've spent a tremendous amount of time on the other side of the river over there because when you sit and talk with the ANC folks over there in 7D and like they don't sit around their ANCs talking about whether the restaurant is using its dumpster properly, right? That's not a 15-minute agenda item.
Right.
It is I was at the meeting when they welcomed the National Guard, the DC Guard to come in and help them clean up because they say they can't get DPW there. Hey, this is Mike Murphy from Ward 6, Capitol Hill. I am running for Ward 6 this June 16th, and I hope you will rank me, at least in your top three. Um, I think we're at a critical point. And we need to really sort of figure out what's working, make government work. And I think we're at a time when I think sort of starting over and shaking the etch a sketch clean would be in all our best interest. I think there's some interesting people running and some new ideas will only make us better.